Glasses on or off?
On.
All right, welcome to the Borgening, Chapter 2, live stream number 2. All right, I have Cooper Sterling with me, and my brother Paul, and I'm Lennon. So, Cooper.
I identify as anarcho-primitive. I am neither here nor there.
How about, okay, instead of using big terms like that, how about you just tell us what you believe?
I believe, this is a political podcast.
Just talk to me.
I believe that, I believe in some conservative values, but I don't believe that all the conservative values are entirely correct.
All right, give me some examples of that.
So, I watched your last episode because I'm a big fan. And when Elijah Murphy said, I believe that older people are more wiser because they've been on this planet longer, I did not fully agree with that statement because just that day I had to set up my grandma's Netflix account. And I thought someone like this does not deserve.
All right, is that
okay?
That's a difference.
All right.
That's a difference
I
between
know, I'm
inexperience with technology
I'm
and
joking.
wisdom. I got that.
I
Okay.
know.
All right. So
But the thing is that they're not as well adapted to the modern climate of politics.
They're not woke.
Paul. They're not woke like me.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Because
But I mean, the old adage is true. There's nothing new under the face of the sun. As long as we're around, there's always going to be people who essentially believe the same things. They believe in their own pride. And older people, they've been around long enough to understand how to, put aside oneself, how to deal with, certain intangible things, like fatherhood and just love and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do agree with that because you can see
I think that's the root of conservative value of that sort of value. It's not necessarily that they're good at,
yeah.
gaming.
I know. Gaming.
They're just,
Yeah, I know.
They're wise. They're wise in other ways.
Actually,
I believe they're wise in other ways, but some of the core values of what they stood for and what they've tried to fight for.
Give me some examples of that.
Racism.
So, all right. So it is a big thing. So back then, racism was.
And I'm not blaming them for it because I do believe that was something of the time, and I do believe when my grandfather calls gay people the F word, he does not mean anything by it, but
I think it is just something that went with the time. But when we talk about those old people, they're the same people who fought for potential rights in the 50s and 60s and stuff, and the women's movement throughout the 1900s.
Yeah.
It's difficult because we have our own downfalls right now as it is,
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we're divided. We're so divided just between left and right as it is, and I would say that can be dangerous as well. Just it's not racism, but it's a certain type of prejudice.
Yeah, I do believe that there is some wisdom that comes with being older, but I also do believe that people, younger people, I would say, they believe that they know what's right, and sometimes they can be so wrong, but it doesn't matter because they have a platform to share their opinion on.
Yeah, that's kind of why I want to do this show. Is just, I mean, I'm a young person, and I think I like to think I'm right on some things, but I want to just have conversations in order to be able to.
I definitely understand.
Yeah.
I believe that censorship is wrong and that conversation is meaningful and it's necessary.
Well, yeah, I agree with that because the best way to fight bad ideas is by getting them out in the open. If you censor somebody and you just have them, hold that in their hearts, I mean, it'll spread, but nobody will know that it's spreading the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to get that out in the open, you're like, this is a stupid idea. And
Yeah, but there's some people that would disagree with us and call us
disagree
racist
with us in
or
what way?
disagree with us in the way that like you can have an opinion as long as it's not incorrect. Like Paul
Sure,
over here.
I do think there are people who you know they
Yeah.
put on that facade of like I hate all conservatives, and they do that on like Twitter and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, there are some people that would act that way personally, but I don't know anybody myself that would just, you know, if I were like, hey, I heard you believe such and such, would you want to talk about that with me? They wouldn't just be like, oh, you disagree with me. Well, you're wrong. I'm never going to talk to you in my life.
Well, I would agree with that, but I've had this experience where I was in school, and this was like I wouldn't call myself intelligent,
All
but
right.
I'm kind of up there. I'm kind of smart.
So you had experiences like that before, where people just
They just
well, yeah,
and they got really
That's-
mad at me.
well, you're all you can also be a bit, you know, but
Much.
but that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
So you're sort of
I'm that guy.
in the center there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you, on the other hand, you just how would you describe
here.
yourself?
He sure is here.
So I don't like to get into politics because every single time I do, someone else has to disagree with me, and they
you have an
have a
example?
difference.
Do you have an example of that?
So I used to I've only been fed facts from conservatives side.
Yeah.
And like I don't know much about politics per se, but so I used to think that like all this stuff was true, and then I would go and talk about this stuff to like.
Do you have a
people.
specific example? Because I just want to get an understanding. Like,
Yeah.
are you putting yourself out there, or have you already assumed that people don't want to talk to you?
Well, it's more of an assumption because I see all this stuff on like online and stuff where people are getting assaulted or like
Yeah.
it's violent. It gets violent.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a glorification of that tribalism in the news, but
Yeah.
I don't think you should necessarily be afraid to, you know,
Well,
voice your opinions. Just
Yeah,
with,
but
like,
I
friends.
don't know if I even have an opinion because both sides
He
are so
hasn't.
flawed.
Yeah.
Sure,
I've
but
felt like
that-
before.
But that doesn't mean you can't, like, you know, like take an idea here from one side and take an idea here from the other.
Right.
That's your new philosophy.
That's my yeah.
So
Yeah.
so if you see something in the news, it could be anything. You don't have any like strong feelings about it necessarily.
No. So like what happened a couple days ago with the Capitol, I felt like there was no right being done there at all. Like I felt
At
like
all?
they didn't have any right to do that. And
Why is that?
It seemed kind of childish. To be
because they put other people's lives in danger because they just didn't feel like they were getting their way.
Well, they would argue that the people who they were the Capitol that they were storming was putting the entire system into jeopardy by, you know, with the Electoral College, by allowing it to be rigged, or however they would put it.
Yeah.
I don't see. I think that's something you need to look out for, because I know the first instinct is like, oh, they're storming the Capitol. America is good. We don't want it to just, you know, crumble. This is probably a pretty bad thing, and I'm not saying I necessarily condone what happened in the Capitol.
Right.
But you need to understand the motives of both sides, both the Senate, who was confirming the election, and the people outside who were storming the Capitol. When we look at like the news and stuff, they immediately just demonize the people who were involved at the rally, instead of, you know, there are some potential actual grievances that they had. Now, should they have taken such violent action? Probably not. But at this point, their voices weren't necessarily being heard to the fullest extent.
Right. Well, I didn't see any I didn't see anything in like the news where it was like protests are being held, like peaceful protests, and not violent ones. They just kind of went straight to being violent.
That's the problem, is they don't show the full picture, because it was originally just a Trump rally, and they were just peacefully marching. I'm not and then it ended up erupting into this storming of the Capitol building.
Right.
The
Well, didn't the same thing happen when Trump was elected? Like liberals.
No. What? So if we're looking back a couple,
And it did nothing.
if we're looking back a couple months, it's not necessarily comparable with the Black Lives Matter riots. Because, because that was
a mass.
Was mass property destruction in comparison to just storming a Capitol building.
No, I was
on black businesses, by the way, which was not helping anything.
Yeah, attacking black businesses for the most part. And then the media was quick to call a lot of that peaceful protesting, even though they were destroying the livelihoods of tons of people.
Yeah. The thing with the Trump rallies,
and I think that's why it's important to. It's difficult because you have Fox News, which is so conservative, you don't get the left, and then you have CNN, which is so left that you don't get the right.
I don't believe that the news is left. It's the commercialization of the news, that they're being sponsored by all these people that are feeding them the information.
And they rely on ratings, so they need to have bigger and better and more exciting.
Yeah.
And then when you flip on the news and all you see is, oh, these people are blowing up the Capitol, you're not getting the full picture.
But
there. So
the same thing could be said about the Black Lives Matter protests.
Well, yeah.
And there was a lot of racial injustice there. And so
potentially, but that was the big problem a lot of people had with the Black Lives Matter, is that the incidents in question, like the George Floyd incident, the Jacob Blake incident, the Breonna Taylor incident, all of those, they weren't necessarily black and white. Now, I agree. I do not condone the murder of anybody.
Yeah.
But when, like, let's take the Jacob Blake incident, for example. When did you watch the video?
No, I did not.
You didn't. You need to. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit late now, but if you watch the video, the guy is reaching into his car when he gets shot. And if you go and you look at some of the court documents and some of the police papers, he was reaching for a knife. There were kids in the car, and the woman who called the police on him was reporting him for rape. So, and to top it all off, he had a record of assault on police officers. Now, I'm not saying that it's necessarily right that he got shot or anything. I'm not saying he did get shot because he assaulted a police officer before. But when you have those circumstances and you decide, I'm going to reach into a car with children in it and grab for a knife, that's not smart around the cops.
That's not smart.
And then when the media turns that into black man shot, this is grave injustice, we need to, kill all cops are bastards, stuff like that. It doesn't show the full picture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And the ACAB thing, I was confused by that when I first heard about it. Like, how can you just assume that all cops are bad or
They are.
bastardized?
I can say that because my dad's a cop.
And then someone told me that, like, it doesn't mean they're all bad, but they all work for a corrupt system, which means they,
I do believe
in a way, are.
I can agree with that to an extent, The problem is when they take this, the system is corrupt, and there is many flaws in the system, but we can't just throw away the system, like defund the police out of the thin air.
That's not going to do anything.
That'll only serve to
You know what that is?
create crime.
That is the same logic that America used when they decided to kill the leader of North Korea, and now we have Kim Jong-un. Like, they thought immediately, like, defunding the police would help, which did not make sense at all. And the same thing happened.
Well, I
But
think
they're
I think that
definitely
I agree that I agree that the police may
have too
need
much
to be
power.
defunded. They have a lot of power,
too much.
and I think they need to certainly be reformed.
Yeah, reform. Yeah.
But
reformation.
you don't just throw away the whole thing and expect it to be all dandy. You need to replace it with something. Now that may be a private body, or militia or something of that sort.
I think that and the thing is, like, private body, that I don't believe in, like, the private body. I believe that they should, like, rework the system, just because if we have a private body, then it could also be on a larger scale,
Well,
the news,
well, yeah.
commercialized.
When I talk about, but when you see private police organizations, right now you've already got this commercialization of the police system. You've already got one body ruled over by everyone. If you have multiple companies vying for competition, they're going to want to perform the best in order to appease the people, and only the best is going to get the funds in order to stay around. And it's the problem arises when with monopolies, is what you're talking about, is when when you have the government come in and say, we need to regulate certain companies, so not just any company can start. But
doing everything and creating.
Well, no,
everything.
they're trying to. When they come in and say, you need to have this license, this paper, this badge, all such and such, before you can even start, policing, it only stifles competition, and eventually you have, the biggest company come in, and they're just they can manipulate the system in order to stifle competition.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You have that type of stuff, with like Walt Disney, and you see this in all kinds of other places in the private world.
Yeah, I don't want to. At this point, I don't want to